I have another depressing story here that just shows how ineffectual the left flank of the Senate and the House is. So this is from Alex Kane from yesterday. He's a reporter contributing writer for Jewish Currents and The Intercept and 972 magazine. So here's what he said. Breaking news, the State Department granted Boeing an export license to sell $735 million in bombs to Israel, a congressional staffer told me, bypassing Democratic opposition. Senator Sanders placed a hold on state nominees in response, but, lifted the hold today. So he continues and says, the approval of the export license for the arms sale, which progressive legislators tried to block, immediately spurred opposition from Senator Bernie Sanders. Sanders was notified that the sale had gone through and responded by placing a hold on all state nominees. After the administration committed to humanitarian aid for the rebuilding of Gaza, Sanders lifted the hold. Sanders said, quote, simply returning to the pre-war status quo was insufficient. The deeper causes, such as the Gaza blockade and evictions in Jerusalem, need to be addressed. Okay, but by your actions, Bernie, you're saying they don't need to be addressed. By your actions, you're saying we don't need to address those things. Why? Because you lifted the hold. Why would you lift the hold? Because you have word of mouth from Biden, who lies like a rug? Oh, we'll do some humanitarian aid for the rebuilding of Gaza. That's all it took. All it took was Joe Biden to call Bernie and say, Bernie, lift that hold. I'm going to need you to do that. And I promise you we'll get some humanitarian aid there for Gaza. That's all it took. When you literally just said, Bernie, you just said, we got to stop the blockade. We got to stop the evictions in Jerusalem, the expanded illegal settlements. That's what we have to do. But Biden's not stopping those things, and you lifted the hold, which is now allowing through the $735 million weapon sale. This is fucking egregious. And this shows how useless the left is in Congress. I wish they were better. I wish they would fight. I wish they would make everybody scared of them. But they don't. Why not keep the fucking hold on it? Keep the fucking hold on. Why wouldn't you keep the hold on it? We're talking about the lives of Palestinian children. That's what we're doing. There's over 60 of them who were killed in this recent bombing. 200 Palestinians were killed. Israel bombed all sorts of civilian infrastructure, including media buildings and Doctors Without Borders and roads to the main hospital. So Israel commits war crimes with our money and our weapons and our backing. And our response to that is, here, have some more weapons and maybe do some more war crimes. What do you think? You're going to give them more weapons? And don't worry, guys. I promise. This time, we're not going to do ethnic cleansing. This time, we're not going to expand illegal settlements. This time, we're not going to bomb civilian infrastructure. I don't know why we overlook this shit. When we gave billions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, we just do that and then turn around with a straight face and argue that we're in favor of democracy and freedom and human rights. You just armed an authoritarian theocracy that beheads people in the street for apostasy. What are you talking about? Freedom and liberty and justice and the American way. Your actions show you believe in the opposite of that. Arming Saudi Arabia, arming Israel, arming the biggest human rights violator in the world, and then having the nerve to turn around and critique anybody else, whether it's Cuba or Venezuela or whatever. We're responsible for what we do. That's what we're responsible for. So when we arm Saudi Arabia, as they committed genocide in Yemen, when we arm Israel, as they do ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, there is no defending that. And the left, Bernie, decides, I'll lift the hold because we're going to give some humanitarian assistance to Gaza to help them rebuild. First of all, I don't even believe that they're going to do that. But that shouldn't be enough in the first place. No, I'm putting a hold on it until you don't give them the $735 million worth of weapons. That's what I'm doing. We have to fight. And by the way, Bernie doesn't even support BDS. So then what do you want Palestinians to do? They can't resist violently because you call that terrorism. They can't resist peacefully because peacefully is BDS. It's an economic approach. It worked in apartheid South Africa. You call that anti-Semitism. So what the fuck do you want them to do? How can a Palestinian resist? How can they resist? They can't do it violently and they can't do it peacefully. Well, we learned the other day that there's a general strike going on, where now even Palestinians who live in Israel, so Arab Israelis, are standing in solidarity with Palestinians. Now, there was a ceasefire recently, but of course, in the news directly after the ceasefire, there's a number of stories. Now, they may be anecdotal, but there's a number of stories of Palestinians being taken into custody by Israeli authorities. So, just because there was a ceasefire doesn't mean that the core problems don't still exist. They're still there. And if we're not supporting the general strike, if we're not supporting BDS, if we're not cutting off our subsidies to them, if we don't stop arming them, then we're useless. And of course, we had blocked like 5 times an attempted ceasefire earlier on. Israel said early on, we don't even want a ceasefire. But this is all it takes to get Bernie to back down. That's it. Just this. And by the way, there was another story that we missed where Bernie apparently said to tone down the rhetoric in calling what Israel does apartheid. The top human rights organization in Israel calls it apartheid. Human Rights Watch calls it apartheid. There's criticisms of Human Rights Watch that, even though they do a lot of good work, they're actually too biased in favor of the U.S. and our allies. Even they call it apartheid. There's at least 50 laws on the books that designate second-class citizenship for Palestinians. There's separate roads in around a lot of the illegal settlements. That's of course apartheid. Of course that's apartheid. And anybody who says like, oh, well, in Gaza they govern themselves and they picked Hamas, so... Have you ever heard of the Bantustans in South Africa? Oh, they govern themselves in there. It's all a ruse. Of course it's a ruse. And Bernie said to tone down the rhetoric over calling a spade a spade? This is pathetic. You should have kept the fucking hold on it. Of course you should have kept the hold on it. Oh, you said you might give Gaza some humanitarian assistance, so now I'll let you arm Israel, who routinely kills Palestinian civilians with these weapons. 2014, Operation Protective Edge. 80% of the people who were killed in the bombing were innocent civilians. 80%. And I think it was 500 children in 2014. Yeah, let's arm them. Yeah, let's give them a subsidy. If you're an elected representative and you're not out there calling for, not looking into withholding the $4 billion that we give them in aid every year, withholding it right now, then you're useless. If you're an elected official and you're not calling for solidarity in BDS, you're useless. You're useless. That's the bare minimum. And hardly anybody's hitting that bare minimum. I do think that Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and even, I don't know if AOC does, but at least Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib vocally support BDS. But we need more that support it, and we need more that want to cut off that subsidy to Israel, because we see how they're using it. Cut off the arms sales to Israel and Saudi Arabia and any human rights violating regime. That's what we have to do. I don't think this is that hard, and people aren't even meeting this bar.